Welcome to the Humanist Podcast. I'm your host, Ken Stearns. Join us on a journey where we unravel the intricacies of workplace dynamics. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Humanist Podcast. Just like the little video said, I'm Ken Stearns, your host. Beautiful day here in Oregon. What is it? The March? We're in a Tuesday. A little crispy outside still, but we're getting a little bit of early light in the morning. Just love this time of year when you start getting that hope. I don't know what it is about light and sunshine and, that early morning you're waking up and it's light outside and you just feel like you got to get going in the day as opposed to those dark. Yeah, right. As opposed to those dark winter mornings. Ben Koppin, welcome to the show. Thanks for spending some time out of your morning and being a guest.
Dude, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. This is fun.
Yeah, for those of you who can't see, he's got, if you're listening on the audio version, you're not watching us live, but you can find us live on YouTube and LinkedIn if you're catching the audio. And Ben's got an awesome background.
Oh, thank you.
Different posters and different drawings and little memorabilia and probably a lot of stories on that wall.
Yep. We got Johnny Cash on this side. And then we have Under Oath. If anyone remembers the Christian hardcore scene in the early 2000s. Went and saw them in LA. That was fun. So yeah,
Christian hardcore.
Christian hardcore, man. That was the thing. They owned the scene, dude. They owned the scene.
It's funny. Those are words I never thought I'd in the same sentence.
You've never been in a mosh pit till you've been in a Christian mosh pit. That's all I have to say. So there you go.
Oh, that is very interesting. That would be.
Yeah,
I missed. Okay. Yeah, I missed that.
There was a music festival called Cornerstone Music Festival, and it was called the Christian Woodstock back in the day. It was in Illinois, and my brother and I went. It was like 5 days or something like that of just like Christian hardcore bands. And I think the first day, and you bring limited clothes. You're camping out in a tent for a week, with all these bands playing tons of pop-up tents everywhere, with just like Christian hardcore bands. And I remember they had this huge mud pit. It rained, so we had this mud pit. Oh. And my brother's jeans, he brought one pair of jeans, and they got ripped from his like back pocket all the way down to his ankle. So we had to buy pins and pin up his pants because he only had one pair of pants. And then I think we got thread and needle from someone's and sewed it eventually. But yeah, dude, it was a good time. Early 2000s, good time to be into Christian rock music. So
where are those bands now? What happens to the bands that are playing this kind of, heavy metal, hardcore Christian lyric? They're writing the lyrics, playing the music.
Dude,
where do they all end up?
Well, what's been crazy is there's a new festival called Furnace Fest that's come back around because like hardcore and emo music has like circled back around. And so there's a festival called Furnace Fest, and all these guys are coming back out of the woodwork and they're playing again. And some of them still have their Christian philosophy and some of them don't. But, that I think what was so cool about the time is, a lot of them were just writing honest lyrics that could bridge the gap between the Christian and the quote unquote secular, world, because it was just raw and honest. And so I think a lot of these bands can go back and play the same music, even if their philosophies have changed, and it still be honest and real to who they are, as opposed to, they never really put on the fronts as much as you saw in like maybe some of the CCM world, like the contemporary Christian world. So anyways, yeah.
Oh, I love it. Well, let's start off with I'm going to pull a question from the jar.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'll just pull one for myself first, and then I want to get into a little bit about what you're doing, right now, the movie you've got.
Yeah,
Pastor's Kid.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Pastor's Kid. I want to come and talk a little bit about that and find the inspiration and stuff. But I'm going to pull real quick. I do this as before I pull one for you. I won't do it. I won't make a guest do anything I won't do.
Okay, sounds great.
So I've got a big jar in front of me. There's 444 questions from my podcast called The Jar, and I traveled around the country to 96 cities, interviewed 323 people.
Wow.
And a fun fact you wouldn't know, Ben, is these all come from my book called Dear God.
Ooh, okay.
It's a whole nother side story. So which comes first? My question is, which comes first, good actions or good character? Yeah, and that's a thinker for a morning time. And I think I would go with character. If I was to just do it simply on the face value of the question, right? You've got that character, and that leads to the right actions most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
after that, it's up to the kind of repeating that cycle, and then the actions kind of become who you are, displays the
Yeah.
character.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Do I answer this one, or do I get a different one?
You're going to get a different one.
Okay. Oh boy. Okay. So I can't even prep anything in my mind.
That'll give you an idea how good they are. Well,
I like it.
so
That's
how do
great.
you end? Were you a pastor's kid, and how did you end up? How did you end up in a mosh pit? How do you end
There
up
you go, Christian
writing?
mosh pit.
Yeah.
Well, so we made this basically. I'll try to keep the long story short, but I was raised in the church, grew up in the church. I accepted
Okay.
Christ, as like a 5 or 6 year old, and my parents bounced around, different churches. Raised in a Baptist church that was, I always say, like, they teach deep doctrine, but sometimes they can be a little legalistic. It's like if you get deep doctrine, sometimes you get legalism. If you get like personal and outreach, then you get like loosey goosey. Everything's just loosey goosey,
Okay.
and so it's like finding a church that hits kind of in the middle of those things is very difficult. But anyways, I was raised in the Midwest in Indiana. Went to a Baptist church. Eventually something happened where the church split. So my parents, ended up going with the pastor that went and was doing his own thing, part of a home church. Long story short, bounced around to different churches throughout, growing up because of different things. But what I loved is that my parents, we always leaned on Jesus and grace. Always. That was the bedrock for everything, was the gospel, was the idea that we're all fallen, we're all messed up. God loves us, forgives us, wants to have a relationship with us. So no matter what we went through, I never felt like the church, like I feel like I could disagree with the church, or I could have questions with the church, and that was allowed, if that makes sense. And
Yeah. Yes. Totally.
even we would go to a church, and sometimes we'd sit in the car driving home, and my parents would be like, well, what do we agree with theologically from that sermon, and what do we disagree? And so there was never this fear of if I ask a question, my hand will be slapped, or I won't be able to ask that. And so what I loved was anytime I disagreed with something in the church, my parents always suggested, go to your Bible and dig into it and figure out what you believe about these things, or what does the Bible actually say about this stuff, instead of taking some pastor at face value of what they think. And so thankfully, I had that aspect, but then my mom ended up working in ministry with a group called Youth for Christ, and they worked with a lot of at-risk teens. So we had cutter teens, back in the late, 90s, it was a lot of cutting was big.
Yes.
We had suicidal attempts, my mom would get calls randomly in the night. Like, I remember we went over to someone's house. The kid had been grown up in an abusive home. Parents became Christians, and the son turned very violent, and he had beaten his mother. And we went into, the mom called my mom, like sobbing. We go into the house, and I will never forget the image of, they had like a wall of mirrors, and he had punched and hit the mirrors, all the mirrors. And so there was blood and shattered mirrors all over the wall. And he was upstairs on the roof of the house, kind of breaking down, crying. And they had to call the police, and my mom had to like talk to the mom and talk to the boy off. And this was me in high school, like experiencing this.
Yeah, that'll leave a mark.
And so but what was beautiful is that Jesus wasn't just in the church, right? Like the ministry of God, it wasn't just in this box looking pretty, right? It was my mom or my parents going out to these areas with kids, and I'll tell you, even we had, kids who were suicidal that were homosexual at the time. And this is before that was accepted. This was before there was as much grace, as there is now in cultural acceptance. And so, there were kids that were suicidal, that were gay, that my mom counseled and worked through, especially being in the Midwest, like she was there for them, or would take them out for pizza or for coffee and just be there, not trying to force anything on anyone or change anyone or push anything, but just be there for them when nobody else would. And so, anyways, that's for me, that's like where I like my relationship with God is it's not dictated by the church. It's not dictated by anybody else. It's dictated by my personal relationship with God. And so, basically felt the call to go into filmmaking, literally just loved making films, loved telling stories. Went to school out in California, worked in the industry for a long time. And then eventually I ended up at a church, just working at a church doing video for a little while through some different things.
Okay.
And so filmed over 200 testimonies while working at this church. And one of them was the story of Pastor's Kid, that basically was a friend of mine I'd worked with, and we were scrambling one Easter, and we're like, we need a story, we need a testimony. And she's like, I'll share my story. So we sit down in our studio and we pull out the camera, we're filming her story, and she's like, yeah, so my mom, this is her story. I had no idea this was her journey, but she's like, my mom was an alcoholic. I basically had to raise my own little brother. Men were in and out of the house growing up. My mom, and she's like, we were in a well-off house. My mom had a great job, but she's like, she would be passed out drunk, hungover. I would have to wake her up in the mornings for her to wake up to go to her job. Later on, my mom hit rock bottom, got clean, became a Christian, eventually became an executive pastor at a church, so she's handling the business side of a church, but she's held in this regard of a pastor type role. And she's like, so everyone's praising my mom for being this amazing conversion story, right? Like this whole journey. And she's like, yet no one sees my pain. The church didn't see my pain, that no one acknowledged that I was the kid that was stuck in the wake of all the stuff that had happened. And so she's like, over years of feeling that. And then, she goes, all of a sudden in high school, I want to go out at 8:00 to be with my friends. And my mom is like, no, you can't go out past 8. Whereas I was the one waking her drunk self up to go to work in the morning. Now I can't go out. And so that hypocrisy that she's experiencing. And so she goes, basically, the church didn't see my pain. I felt like God didn't see my pain. So going off to college, I got into drug dealing. I got into partying. I got into all this stuff. And she's like, I'm still a straight A student, right? Like I'm still look great on the outside. I'm like, doing well. But she's like, I'm basically, she's medicating this trauma that she had growing up.
Absolutely.
She goes, so eventually she gets that there's these string of things that happened where she gets roofied at a bar one night, and 2 predators are trying to make off with her in a car. Her friend rescues her, and she wakes up the next morning to missed calls from her mom. And she's like, I hadn't talked to my mom in like 6 months or a year, something like that. But I had drunk roofie dialed my mom all that night, being like, people are after me. They're taking me. Someone help me. So a hysterical mom, I finally get a hold of, and she's like, what is going on? And so she's like, we reconnect. And that started to bring up all of these things. And she's like, so eventually after there's more stuff you'll see in the film kind of lead up to this, but she's like, my mom eventually invited me on this trip to Sri Lanka. Church trip to Sri Lanka, because there's like summer break, and she's like, it's half a church conference and half a vacation in Sri Lanka. Will you come? We'll pay for it. It'll be free. She's like, for some reason, I say, I'll go on this trip. And basically, I don't want to spoil the movie too much, but basically she goes on this trip and she has an experience with God that shows her there's a different route in life. And that's that our film, the whole idea is like, you don't get the answers. You don't see anything necessarily change fully. It's leaving more questions of, where do you think she goes after having this experience? And so basically, after we'd filmed her story, I was so moved by it. I asked her if we could turn it into a film, because I felt like so many people could relate, from hypocrisies in the church, maybe hypocrisies through their parents, trying to medicate or running from things in our past. And then eventually at some point, I feel like all of us, and it's not even a Christian way, but we all have to face our past at some point. We all have to face things that have gone on. And that's what our story does. So that's where it's R-rated. And that's been the thing that has gotten a little bit of criticism from Christians, not a ton, but a little bit, is I just felt like this is such a story that can relate to both people of faith and people not of faith, that if we told it in a raw, real way, like the most authentic way possible, this is something that could kind of bridge that gap. Oh, similar to the Christian hardcore music I used to listen to back in the day. Right? Yeah. It's like, why can't we make a movie that feels in that same tone and feels just as honest and real? And it's been amazing to have people experience it and feel moved by it. So anyways, the film's Pastor's Kid. It's coming out in theaters March 15th. And that's
fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. So it's fresh. It's coming out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It comes out. Was it 2 weeks? We're about to hit. So, so our first weekend, it's at March 15th or 15th, 16th, and 17th. And if that weekend is a success, AMC will expand it to more theaters throughout the country. And so we start in 30 theaters in 30 cities across the country. And then,
that's amazing.
There's going to be one in Portland too. I'll let you know when it's up there.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
It's if it hits, then they'll expand it and it'll grow. And then if we underperform, then it'll get pulled after that weekend. So we're trying to push everybody that first weekend. If you want to see a raw, real story, go check it out. And if you're a Christian or not a Christian, if you've been burnt by the church or you love the church, go,
Yeah, it
because
applies to all,
it
right.
applies to everyone. And my big thing is, my joke is, I say, little old church lady, you take your heathen college student to go see this movie, and heathen college student, get your little old church lady
take your
and go
church
see
lady.
this movie. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, that is really good. That's a great sales pitch, right? Yeah, they take a either other. You know, when you're telling the story, this has been my experience over the last couple of years.
Mm.
You know, interviewing. Yeah, I love how we've both interviewed a ton of people,
Yeah.
and you know, you get so surprised. The person standing next to you in the grocery store, the person checking you out,
Mm-hmm.
has got an amazing story.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, I love this idea that she's come full circle already, pretty young.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
To, you know, to have come full circle, and maybe she's already got another couple of little circles to go in life.
Yep. Well, and there's even a whole, if I'm not saying we'll make Pastor's Kid 2, but there's more to the journey if anybody would ever want to check it out, or there's more to the story. And I think even what you're talking about is, like, we really try to explore the idea that we're calling the film Christian art house is the term we're trying to use, because the film is as if a documentary crew was just dropped in this woman's life for a handful of days. And the idea is that, you know, through the mundaneness of life, these triggers are starting to, like, pop up of things that she experienced throughout her life. And it's that idea that, like you said, the person next to you, the cashier, the whoever, you never know what they've been through. You don't know what they're experiencing. Like, even my mom, she grew up with a really rough background, I'll just say, and something terrible happened to her as a child during a Christmas season. And so whenever she heard Christmas music growing up, you could see a change in her personality sometimes, because that would trigger those feelings of abandonment that she felt as a child. And that's one of those things. And so she would be like, let's wrap up at this store. And she wouldn't, you know, there wouldn't be a big explosion. There'd be nothing big. It would just, you could see that she's like, let's just get out of this environment for a little bit, because it's making me feel icky. And that's what we really tried to do within the film, is that it's just these mundane, regular things in life that are triggering these deep hurts that she's not dealt with before. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. I had a few of those stories of kids essentially raising the parents and keeping an eye on the parents. And boy, man, that sticks with them. And that's really something, you know, if you're, especially you're listening to this episode and, you know, you've got those kinds of memories, you know, talking about it, finding someone to confide in,
Absolutely.
you know, if that includes a therapist or a friend, or telling the story.
Exactly.
I think quite often writing it down or telling the story is a great way to start, you know, that healing, because you understand yourself.
No, 100%. And you can look back and see the journey you've been on, and hopefully process those things. And that was one of our goals with Pastor's Kid, is that it's like, hopefully this film has enough space and enough room that even though she's not your exact story, that you can kind of place some of the things you've been through in those gaps and kind of process and work through them in some ways. Was kind of our ways, like, if it can be a little bit of a therapeutic process for you, or even, dude, I'll tell you what's been insane is, with the language and with it being R-rated, I didn't think our audience would be the conservative Christian, like, woman in the Midwest. But we had a small screening with conservative Christian, like, older women in the Midwest. And we told them, they're like, it's R-rated. Know what you're getting into going into this. This is why we did it. And they went and watched it. And what was really cool was when we got our reviews back, these women would say, like, I knew this person in college, or I made these types of mistakes too, or I've been through this. And these are women that felt like they couldn't share this within the small group for all these years. And so that's been a really eye-opening, or a really cool, unsuspected audience, is that these women who go into it with an open mind come out and say, if God used her story, or, you know, took her through this, then now I can share some of my stuff and what I've been through, and not feel shame for that. And so that's been a beautiful, like, I didn't think that was going to be our audience, but it's been neat to kind of see it do that, you know? So
it gives people permission. Right. It makes it okay. This is the great part about sharing. You find out.
Exactly.
Here's what you find out. You're not alone.
Exactly.
You know, you're not the only one that's been through something. It's all different, and the journey's different, and the feelings are different. But there's a lot of things you can identify with. Totally. I love that.
Dude. And when you can find community like that, that's okay with sharing some of the raw stuff and is still going to love you and be there for you, that's powerful. That's really powerful. So, yeah.
Be kind of cool if you get picked up by some, some of the large organizations and they start watching it together
Right, right.
and then talk about it.
Well, we even have a friend. I don't know if you've heard of Celebrate Recovery, but it's the Christian AA basically in churches.
Okay.
And he's been really pushing for us to try to get it over to them because he's like, he calls Celebrate Recovery. He's like, that's the real church. That's where we we talk about the real stuff we
the
dig
real
through.
Stuff.
Yes, yes. And he's like, if this film can help people see, like, you can get through this or you can process. And not that and that's the beauty of our film is it doesn't end with a perfect fix. And nobody is like damned in the movie for their things. It's trying to show humans and let people process things. And I don't know, we give hope at the end, I'll put it that way, but we're not trying to put a period. Yeah, it's like we're not trying to put a period on the sentence. We're trying to allow the journey to continue. So
and allow people to interpret it. Right.
Exactly.
I think
exactly.
Let them imagine their own ending or the parallels in their own life.
Exactly.
Yeah, without putting it into a box.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy, am I getting my question now?
I think it's a good time. 20 minutes in.
Oh boy, let's see what we got.
This, going deep.
Oh boy.
Oh, holy cow. I'm trying to grab one. There we go.
It's going to be like, do you like ice cream or yogurt better?
Yeah, it's this is, I love the jar because it's always listening.
That's
I feel.
Awesome.
So you're going to love this question. You're going to love the question first off for two reasons. One is we just talked about this. What does hope mean to you?
Ooh, that's really good. That's really good. And this is going to sound a little hippie maybe, but the idea of hope for me is just light and positivity. And I think the idea people get trapped in the box or they feel alone. And I think it's fine realizing there's another path to take. There's a journey that you can continue to go on and moving forward in that, as opposed to being stuck and feeling trapped. And I feel like so much in our world, you can feel darkness, like you can feel the idea of darkness. And it's really funny because I don't know if you've ever been in like a youth group environment. Sometimes they'll do this thing where they turn off all the lights, right? And they're like, oh, look how dark it is. This is the world, right? And then they light one candle. If you've ever had this experience, they light the one candle and it lights up the whole room. And they're like, see how much this one light can like light up the room.
It's real. Yeah.
And I know that sounds so silly or so cliche, but it is real. It's like one positive, experience that you're making, one love, grace, like putting that out there for people, trying to bridge the gap between two groups, is a big thing too. Is I think we're so polarized that anytime someone crosses that line to love another, that shows hope to the whole world that it's like we can find commonality and get along. Anyways, so yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I love that. Anytime one person in even a toxic place or a dark place, I love that. What you just said, that shows people, that there is hope. There are good people. There's another way.
Right. No, 100%. Oh,
yeah, it was funny because I pulled the question. My granddaughter was hanging out with me yesterday, and we pulled the question from the jar.
Ooh, nice.
And hers was, "Have you ever lost hope?" And she's 7. So you can imagine the answer was, a little bit trying to understand what hope is, and then to imagine you're 7 and you lost hope. And she did have a story.
Yeah,
she had a story. It was interesting, and it was her own interpretation of hope, and then her own interpretation in her own life, 6, 7 years of what it's like to lose hope.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. My son, I have a 7-year-old son, and he'll share. He had one experience where he was playing with a stick at a Sunday school, and let's say he was getting a little too wild with the stick, so the teacher took the stick and threw it over a fence away for him to not, because he had poked some kid, probably shouldn't have been playing with the stick. Like I'll get it, but
100%.
But to him, exactly what you're talking about is that was his like moment of despair. He's like, my stick. And he still remembers it. That was years ago. And he still remembers it. So it's like, that's what came to mind when you're talking about a kid's version of losing hope. But then what's the answer to that? Zeke, there is still a ton of other sticks in the world. That, there's always another stick that we can get you, buddy. So it's.
And there's even a better stick.
There's even a better stick.
This is the reality of life, right? When you lose that one, and it's even if it's taken from you.
God
You
has
know,
another stick for you just around the corner that's gonna
there's
be a better stick.
just keep your eyes open. There's another one that's even bigger, better. It's got a different, it feels better in your hand. There's always
Oh,
another one.
oh, that's awesome.
There's
That's
always
awesome.
another one. What are you
Oh,
thinking of now? What's you've got? I mean, you're on the precipice of you've got your first movie. It's in theaters. I mean, that's an
yeah, it's
amazing
our first theatrical,
accomplishment,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
What's in your brain now?
Oh, I'm terrified in every aspect, way, shape, and form. And I'm up, I'll be honest with you, I'm up till 3 AM every night, just like praying and trying to like get in a good spot. But it's just one of these things, man, that it's like, we swung for the fences in trying to do something different. Like the way I even present it is it's like, it's as if you made a normal movie that happens to talk about faith, and that was something that people could not wrap their heads around. And that's why we've had to kind of coin a term. We're trying to call it this Christian art house is the term we're trying to use, just to try to let the little old ladies, like, a little church lady know, like, you're going into an R-rated movie that's going to be raw and real. We're not watering
Yeah,
down anything. And then it's just been interesting. Some of the comments we've gotten, like I said, the majority have like come to our defense with the choice of doing that and making it art, because I think people are ready for real
yeah,
stories that talk about this. And I see the younger generations especially are like, I am done with the like putting on a face. I am done with this like trying to clean things up. And so a lot of them come to our defense, but we'll get a handful of people that are, will question my salvation or call me a heathen, or some of these things. So, but what's been really cool is I try not to respond in a way that's irritated or angry. I try to respond in
yeah.
expressing why we did this. And what's been really cool is to see the majority of people that come at it like all like hot and frustrated. By the end of it, when I've explained it, they go, well, I'll be praying for you. I hope this movie reaches who it's supposed to reach. And that's like that beauty that I'm just like, man, if we can bridge that gap, if we can get those people together, the people that are deconstructing or burnt by the church, to sit in the same theater with that little conservative church lady, isn't that beautiful? Wouldn't that be amazing? And so that's been my hope, is like, if we can kind of bridge that gap. I always say like these two groups need to watch the movie, then grab dinner afterwards and talk about it, because I think they'll have so much more they can
Oh
relate
man,
on than they even know. You know what I mean? So yeah,
you
but
know
I'm
the
terrified.
yeah, the little old ladies are the ones in the movie. They're the moms.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
and they know the moms, right? They know
Yep.
that mom down the street that went to church, that drank too much.
Right.
They know that mother. A good one of my neighbors just wrote a book. I'm 62, and she was an older sister of one of my great friends, neighbor,
Mm,
and we knew the family, the Kissingers, and she wrote really a family autobiography
mm.
about what it was like to grow up with these. I think it was 8 kids. They
Oh,
started out with
wow.
eight kids in the house. The dad was a traveling salesperson, gone 5 nights.
Jeez. Yeah.
Mom managed the whole thing, but mom was drunk, started first martini at 5, the
Mhm.
little mama's little helper, little Valium, at
Right.
6, another martini at 6. By 9, mom was out.
Mhm.
And, at night, if mom's already gone mentally by 8 or 7:30, you can imagine with 8 kids. It's a
Right.
circus, right? It's a
Mhm.
circus. And, 2 of her siblings committed suicide.
Jeez. Yeah.
Yeah, one of them was my good friend, a kid I spent,
Mm,
countless hours, in the neighborhood, in the dirt, in the backyards,
right.
flashlight tag, bicycles, doing all kinds of silly stuff. And, you look at that, and they were in the church. Everybody's
Right.
buttoned up, and on Sunday you go to church and there they are, and the family looks all great and normal. And I'm reading this book going, holy
Ooh,
bananas. I mean,
yeah.
I knew the house was, it was wild, but I had no idea.
Right.
And, just the family writing this story to share so other people could identify with it. And it's
Mhm.
not like they were the only family like that.
Right.
There's no way. So I think the point of that story is those little old ladies aren't so innocent and pure. They've
Right.
seen everything. And what if they weren't that mom, they knew that mom.
Right.
And so to a chance to bridge across the generations, I think you've got it's hard to find stories that do that.
Right.
And you might
Well,
you might be onto it.
And what we tried to do too is we tried to not make anybody the villain. Like we tried to show complexity in every character in the film, so that even when you appreciate that the mom has this redemption moment, but then you also understand the daughter. And then even that scene, like I was telling you, where she's trying to tell her daughter not to go out past 8, is and the actors they pulled it off. They were so incredible. But the actress that played the mom in the film, you see this earnestness in her face, because the daughter's like, this is stupid. I should be able to go out. And the camera
Right.
pans over to the mom, and you see this like shock, and just like, she's like, no, it's not. Like, and you can just tell she's like, I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to like, be a better mom. I'm trying to step up in these ways. And you're just like, but without digging up that past, it feels like you're being someone fake. It feels like but the actresses just did such a great job of showing that realities, even within the drug scene that we show within the film, this drug culture that we're expressing. It's like, you see Riley's our main character, as she's in college, she's dealing drugs. And you see that these friends are a little bit parasitic. There's a little bit of that relationship where they're friends with her because they want the drugs, right? They want to be able to get it from her, and she's the dealing. But yet there are these beautiful moments where they dig deeper and they ask those questions, and they're up late at night. There's a scene where she wakes up in the middle of the night and goes downstairs to this character who's kind of been a jerk the whole time. And he's smoking weed, playing the guitar, and he gives her the joint, and she smokes a little bit and sits down. And they talk for a good, just like 10 minutes. It's this long scene. And you find out he's like, I learned to play guitar in my junior high youth group, and so then they start sharing their experiences together, and they start bonding, and those are those real experiences I've had in my life, where it's like you meet people and all of a sudden you're sharing these stories of the past. They're like, oh, I didn't know your parents were, overseas ministers, and you were, in other countries. I didn't know. I wouldn't have expected that of your life. Yet everybody has these backstories. So we really tried not to paint anyone as like, this person's the villain or this person's one-dimensional. We tried to give depth to everybody, so that going into the film, it's not just like, oh, mom bad or this person bad. But you see the complexities of who they are. So,
yeah, and the story's never done.
Right. Yeah.
Right. The character's never, you're seeing a moment of that character, but the reality is so much behind that, and so much in front of it.
Right. No, 100%. And it's even crazy. Like, I don't want to spoil the ending of the movie too much, but let's just say, the mother-daughter relationship in real life was brought back together in some ways, is redeemed quite a bit. And we don't fully get to that in the film. For me, we end the film at a very question mark moment, because I felt like a traditional Christian movie, I'll put it this way, would have had like our character be like a drug addict and a drug dealer, and then she's clean and saved by 15 in the movie, right? And then she goes off and she's like helping people in other countries. Our movie, I was like, no, we can't truncate that journey for her of how did she get from, I'm putting up a wall for God, I'm putting up a wall to the church, I'm putting up a wall to my mom, to now all of a sudden her heart slowly breaking open to being open to those relationships again to a certain degree. And so our whole 90-minute movie is that process of her heart slowly getting broken open a little bit more, to an ending scene where now she might have a different road she can take. She can either go back to the lifestyle she's been leading. And what was beautiful is there's a moment where she reflects and she realizes, like, I am doing what my mom was doing. I'm a reflection of the medication my mom was doing as a kid. And do I want to continue down that road, or is there another option for me? And so we kind of leave the film with a little bit of a cliffhanger of where do you think she'll go? And my goal was that I wanted an atheist to be able to walk into our movie and by that end moment say, please, God, help her not to go back to that lifestyle, and help it feel earned. You know what I mean?
I love it.
Sit here and say, I don't care what it is. I don't care what religion it is or what belief system it is. I don't want her to go back to what she was doing. She needs to do something different. And I think we did that. I think we earned it in our movie. So
I love that story.
We'll see.
Even if it's an atheist screaming out, come on, God.
Come on, get her out of there. Yep.
Oh, that is magical. I really, that is a beautiful part of the story. I love this, one of the common themes for me in interviewing people, and the discovery was how many people have stopped the cycle.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, I wasn't around 20 years ago or 50 years ago where I was doing this, so I don't, you know, I don't know those stories, but it feels to me after interviewing so many people that there's a whole shift in this where people are stomping family trauma.
Mm-hmm.
A much stronger generation has come up where they're just like, it stomps with me. Like
Yeah.
the stuff that I went through, my kids will not experience that.
Mm.
And there's a shield or something where it just feels those are the predominant stories that I got. People ending the cycle.
That's beautiful. Yeah,
And
our actress even she said just the other day to me, she goes, I feel like honesty is just in the air right now. I feel like people are done with, even when you go on social
yes.
media, I know people are still posting the front on social media sometimes, or they're travel vlogging, but you're seeing
Mhm.
more so like even sillily, like on social media, you're seeing like, you know, influencer what they took and then reality. You know what I mean? You're seeing them side by side where it's like they got this beautiful picture of them alone on the beach, but then you see the reality of all these people they're like making their way through. And so she's like, you know, I feel like in the air is just this idea of like, we're done putting on the front.
Yeah.
We are done faking things, and we want honesty and reality. She's like, I just feel like it's in the air, both in the Christian world and the non-Christian world as a whole in our culture. People are done with this, like putting on this front and making things look beautiful and fake. And so that's where I think even with this movie, I feel like we're stepping into this interesting cultural time where I would have told you, you know, 10 years ago, I don't think Christians were ready. I don't think, you know, anybody's ready
Oh,
for
for sure.
a bridge gapping film like this. But now I feel like they're kind of like we need stuff like this. So we're an interesting season where I have a huge, tremendous amount of hope for people, you know, searching for honesty that this film can connect with. So yeah.
When the Kardashians come off the air, I'll believe it.
Oh, there you go. Hey, you still have to have some, all right? You still have to have some. You have to have your what is it? Your comfort food sometimes. So for people.
Yeah, that one
Hilarious.
to me is that's the canary in the coal mine for
Yeah,
me.
there you go. There you go. Nope, no, no.
Yeah,
Oh, that's amazing.
until people stop watching that nonsense, you know, watching famous people doing, you know, brushing their teeth and wiping their boopies, you
Right,
know,
right, right.
the people aren't really ready.
That's
Oh,
amazing. I love that.
I'm going in for another one for you.
Let's do it. This is great.
Let's get another question. Hmm.
Uh-oh.
It's a good one for yeah, they're all good. I love the jar. Can you love unconditionally?
Ooh. Yes.
Yeah, I would
Because
suspect you're at that place.
I believe so. Yes, I believe. At least from well, I guess this is the human question, is because, you know, humanity, we have both the good and the bad within us, right? You know,
Mhm.
so does the human have full capacity to love unconditionally? I believe on a spiritual level, I believe God has the power absolutely to love unconditionally, 100%. But as a human, yeah, I do. I think we do. I'm going to sit here and say, yeah, I think
Yeah.
that we can be inspired by that. We can have, you know, be sacrificial. I think you see all these stories. Like I even watched, just rewatched the movie, was it Hacksaw Ridge recently? I don't know if you
Ooh.
remember that one.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
I
Ooh.
was trying to go through like, what are other faith stories that are R-rated that have been told? I was kind of, I just needed it to like throw it in and watch it.
To make you feel like
Yeah.
it's
Maybe
possible.
like, yeah, we can do it. Someone will watch it. And just even that one again, I know that, you know, in some films, they, you know, they obviously hallmark everything in some ways, or they condense things. But to see that story of a man who has been picked on and ridiculed
Mhm.
by his group, then go and say, just one more, God, just one more. And he's going and saving people's like saving people. And when you research the actual story, that it's like even more insane, the things he did to go save people, that it's like, you have to sit there and say, we get glimpses of the divine or however you want to put it,
Yeah.
in those experiences every once in a while. I think it's very hard to get there. It's very hard to put yourself secondary. And that could be really difficult sometimes, you know? So, but no, I think it's possible. Yes, I would say that.
How about can you love yourself unconditionally?
Ooh, I don't know.
And how has that journey been for you?
I don't know. That's a difficult one because you know all you know all the dark corners. You know all
Yeah.
the dark corners of yourself. Um, and that's really, really tricky sometimes. And when you get in those isolated moments, and I had a theology teacher one time say, he goes, The one thing no one could get away from is when you lay at bed at night and you stare at the black void of your ceiling. And he goes, there's no one else for you to confront but yourself. And I think everybody feels that. We have those times we play through all of our greatest strengths and all of our weaknesses. And that's really tricky. A friend talked about how within humanity is, oh man, it's two things. We have the divine within us where we can do positive, great things, yet we have the worst within us as well. And those two things both are held at an equal weight. And so the moment you try to like, oh, I'm more divine, that's when you get the arrogant, righteous people. And then when you hold the darkness up more, that's where you get, some sketchy things that can happen. But humanity is trying to hold both of those at equal weight in some way. Anyways, I don't know. That's a tricky one. I don't know if I could answer that one fully. I would hope so. I would hope so through. Yeah, I would hope so.
I think it's a journey.
Yes. That's a good way to put it.
I think it's a journey. Some of us get there, and I think some people lose it. I think some people are there, and they may lose hold of the grasp, right? They may lose hold of that for a moment or a period of time, and then find it again.
Right.
I mean, certainly when we're kids, we do.
Dude, isn't it awesome? I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and just the joy. They're great ages, dude. It's so amazing, and just like the joy they have, and the positivity they have, and the excitement they have. And I think if anybody gets depressed and dark, if you can get around kids and just like not be like judgy, but just go in with an open mind of like kids and experience them, there is so much hope for the future. There's so much positivity. There's so much even my son, I was talking to him about, this is silly. He loves to invent things. He's a big inventor kind of guy.
Okay.
And I talked to him about how when I was growing up at the grocery stores, we had paper bags and plastic bags. Okay. And you could choose. And then they thought that the paper bags were cutting down too many trees. At least that's what I was told. So they got rid of the paper bags and they went to plastic bags. And I said, but now what they've realized is that the plastic bags don't deconstruct, as quickly as the paper bags would. So now it's worse for the world than the paper bags were for the world, because the paper bags would deconstruct. And I was like, so that's going to be your generation to figure out. And so he sits in the corner for a while and he goes, what if somehow we merged the paper and the plastic? So part of it could like deconstruct, but then other parts wouldn't, but it wouldn't fill up as much as like the ocean, different things. And I'm like, go for it, dude. And that's where and I know that it's a kid that doesn't have a full understanding of the world and all these things, but don't we need that sometimes? Don't we need that perspective of what's outside the box that we haven't thought of as a society or a culture? So anyways, I love it. That's what I get excited about.
Yeah, this kid, I mean, like you said, get around kids. They're hopeful. They love themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They don't see any flaws.
Yep.
Yeah. There's nothing negative about them until, over time in society and school and class and, other humans, fill their minds with the faults and shortcomings.
Yep.
But as far as a pure little human, they've got that just magic in their eyes.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
So you're 10 days away.
Yep.
Big moment. I guess there's, I always say there's 3 things that can happen. I can't have a rule of thirds, but for you, it looks kind of black and white, right?
Yeah.
You're going to, on that Tuesday, you're going to get the numbers, or Sunday night, maybe. I don't know how fast the numbers come. Have you played through the 2 scenarios?
Oh,
going nationwide and then getting the call that we're going to bring it down to 10 theaters for, till Thursday. And, cause we don't have a plan for other than that. And then we're going to, kill it.
Yep. I'm trying to be prepped either way. I'm just honestly thankful that, we have this opportunity to get it out this way. That's where I'm trying to be is like the fact that it's gotten this far. We have had, there's a whole backstory we could even share of trying to partner with the Christian film industry and being turned down by many Christian producers in the industry because of how we wanted to tell this story. And even I got one comment from someone on social media that was like trying to use our rating to like market your film. And I'm just like, buddy, if you even knew how many people came to us and said, make it PG, make it PG-13, and you'll make so much more money if you do it this way. Sell a book with it, put a whole movement behind it. Like basically the Christian marketing machine, we were pitched so many times.
That feels dirty. That
And
feels
exactly.
dirty.
I called my wife after one meeting because we had just been, I had pitched it around multiple times of like, we're telling it in a raw, R-rated, authentic
Yes.
way. And that we were pitched that. We were like, I'm interested if you would do PG-13 or PG, sell a book with it and all this stuff. And I called my wife afterwards, and she helped me write the film and is a producer on the movie. I called her and I was like, do we just give in? Do we just do that and kind of sell out a little bit? And she's like, no, we do it ourselves and we do it the way we feel called to do it. And so that's what we did. And it has been exponentially more difficult because we did it this way. So that's where, for me, there is this beauty finality of whether it hits or whether it's out quicker, it's kind of done and off my plate. And I feel like the calling that we had to do this movie in this way, there'll be like a little bit of a period on it, or at least some little ending on like, we did it, we put it out, and now it's up to God and the audience of whether they respond or whether they don't. And I can kind of get it out and feel confident that I did what I was supposed to do. And it's not lingering anymore.
Well, and grateful you got to do it, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. That you met her, you got the story, you were inspired, and you've gone this far to get it done. I mean, this is your first one, right? It's not like it ends and you're done. This is your career. Okay, it's done in 3 days and I'm out.
So I had done a couple of other films, and then this was our first one. I had toyed around with the idea of talking about faith in our films, and this was the one that I just didn't have the guts to do it. And this was the first one that I felt confident, I think this can reach people. I think this can bridge that gap. But yeah, 100%. We got other projects cooking. So
yeah, and so after this, I mean, you're already a success, right? I mean, a success is, it's the progression towards a worthy goal.
There you go. Ooh, I like that.
And you're successful already. You're a huge success in that definition. So what's next? What happens after this? Because this thing will do its own thing, right? It'll have its own life. But you're gonna create something else. What are you thinking?
Yeah, so we actually have a handful of what we do is every year, my wife and I make an indie film. We produce an indie feature film every single year is our goal. Wow, and so sometimes it's a big film and sometimes it's a little film. And so recently we started our own distribution company called 1988 Films. I think it's 1988-films.tv or something. I'll send you the link. But basically what we've been doing is all these films we had stacked up over time, we've been releasing through VOD, and we've been getting them out there, and we've created those relationships. And then we recently signed a contract for physical media. So that's DVDs and Blu-rays at like Walmart and Barnes and Noble and some of these other places. And so this film is our first theatrical release. Pastor's Kid is our first theatrical release. So now we have relationships for VOD and getting it out there. We have relationships for physical media, and now we have theater. So we have all three relationships now. So we have a handful of films still coming out this year. We have one called Burn My Money. That's a boxing movie we shot during the pandemic. Funny enough, there's a whole story behind that. We have a thriller called Kill a Prophet. That's out on VOD right now. A handful of others. And then we have 2 family comedies coming out later on this year. So we just honestly, it's kind of like we get inspired by what we want to make at that year, and we just create it and go for it. So the whole distributing our own films is new to us. So that's where we're kind of building the plan as we fly it a little bit. But we had been burnt by a distributor in the past, and I was just like, I can't go through that again. So that's why we've been kind of learning this other side a little bit to get our films out. So yeah.
Oh, what a fun journey,
dude. It's cool too.
What
like
a fun journey.
Having like our kids be a part of things too. Now that we've made a handful of like kid-ish movies, kind of like action kid fun movies, and they get to be on set. My son acted in we made an alien, family-friendly alien movie. He played the alien, so he's in the mask and all this stuff. And so, we're renting like spaceship sets up in LA and going and filming in sets and stuff. And so it's been really cool to like see the kids' imagination just blow up of like, oh, I could do this for a living, or I could like pursue things like this. And the world is just so open in like the filmmaking world. So whether they choose to do that or not, it's up to them. But I mean, what a fun childhood of being an alien in an alien movie in a spaceship set, like
with your dad.
Cool.
Not a bunch of weird Hollywood people.
Exactly.
It's your mom and your dad, and you're doing this. And they see everything you're doing, the creative side and the
Well,
process.
and my son actually acts in Pastor's Kid. He plays the little brother that she raises. So he's in a handful of scenes in the film. And one of the scenes people quote is like the most heartbreaking scene because the mom comes in drunk. And we told him when we were filming it, we were like, he was 3 at the time, 4 at the time, something like that. And we told him, we're like, she's going to pretend to be sick. So like, just know she's pretending to be sick is the way we explained it. And so when she stumbles in, he goes, the first line out of his mouth, and you can still hear it in the movie, he goes, "Are you pretending to be sick?" And so he had to like muffle it a little bit to be like, you can't really hear what he says a little bit. But anyways, he's adorable in the film. He's got, I think, just like 2 or 3 scenes in the film. So I wish I could take him, but then we made it R-rated, so now he can't come and see the whole thing yet. But I might slip him in the theater for a couple of moments. So
yeah, I mean, the reality is, as long as he knows better, right? This is
right.
you're going to meet people in life that use words that are flowery and aggressive, and sound, probably words we don't want to choose, or might be better words we can use in life.
Right.
Get a bigger vocabulary, and you can you can be more articulate. But for this movie, this is how people talk.
Right.
Yeah,
and that's been the big, honestly. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's it.
I was just gonna say that's been the big thing, even with the Christians who are critical of it, is I try to sit here and say, like, we're showing the real world. And I'd love to be able to paint this picture for you where the real world is butterflies and nothing happens that you disagree with. But the real world is not that way. And there, what someone said, like, it goes against God and it breaks God's laws. And I responded and I was like, yes, that's what the real world does that we're trying to show. Is that I'm not here trying to say, like, go do drugs or go do this thing. We're trying to show that this stuff ends up empty for a lot of people. And so if you don't show that reality and that emptiness, and you water it down, then it just doesn't ring as true. And that felt false to me, So anyways.
Yeah, that's fake. I mean, there's no world like that. And that's why there is, at least in the Catholic Church, confession. And I'm sure every major religion's got some moment where you reconcile with God or yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 100%.
We're spiritual beings having a human experience down here.
Yeah.
It's just trying to get it right.
There you go.
And you got you got roughly 80 years to figure it out.
Right. 100%.
Not all of us are going to get it perfect by the time we're 21.
Right. Exactly.
just those guys.
Just
the ones criticizing the language, right? Those are the ones that you're exceptional. You already figured a life out. You already got it. You're already a perfect human.
Yep. Well, I tried to tell someone, I said, this was just, I think, last night, and every comment hurts still, like I was telling my mom about it. I was like, every negative comment, it's still like, and my mom was like, well, it's like, just know, your worth doesn't come from these people. It comes from God. All these things. I'm like, I know, Mom, but it's still just everyone. You're like, so I try to respond. And one of them was like, saying that they wouldn't go see an R-rated movie. And I know a lot of people in my church that won't go see an R-rated movie. And I said, my response was, can you think of someone in your life who's in darkness right now that this movie could connect with? This is, someone that wouldn't go see traditional faith film, that, traditional faith film that could, it could be helpful to bring them to this film to start that conversation with them. And the response was, nope. And I was just like, okay, I'm done with that one. Because I'm just like,
can't save everybody.
If you can't think about, there's someone in your life that you could have a positive dialogue with that you disagree with, I'm just like, well, okay, then go watch your Christian stuff and live in your little bubble. And that's okay. Like, I'm not picking on you with that. It's like, if that's the world you feel safe in, but just to be like, nope. I was like, okay, there you go. That's all. I don't have anything left to add to the conversation. So,
I mean, the reality is, as we found out later, even Little House on the Prairie had some dark stuff happening on the set.
Right.
So, you go watch Little House on the Prairie and you can be in your bubble, but just try not to imagine the stuff that Michael Landon was actually doing on the set.
Right. And that's what's crazy is it's like, as long as it's clean in front of our face, we don't really care how the sausage is made.
Right.
Whereas when you study these faith films, I'm not saying all of them, but there are certain sects of this Christian world where when you study the actual behind the scenes of what was going on, it's very maniacal and it's very money driven, money oriented, as opposed to actually trying to tell a good story or do something that is positive. It's all about the money and the finance for these people. And but a lot of people don't care how the sausage is made, and that's okay. You know, I understand that not everyone's going to do homework on things, but it's just interesting where it's like we tried to come out with the most pure intentions of why we're making this, and we're the ones getting called out by certain people, and you're over here just like, okay, like we'll take it and just see what happens. So
I think it won't matter. Those voices won't matter in the end.
Right. No, I agree.
Right. That's not your audience, probably.
Yep.
Anyway, like you said,
Yep.
you're looking, if you could, people on the fringe are your audience, bringing those people in and finding those people.
Well, and even with this whole phrase deconstruction, right? Religious deconstruction. And was it in church too with the Me Too movement? I think there was a whole hashtag that was like in church too, about people who were abused within the church. So you have that then mixed with the deconstruction movement that's been going on, that everyone posts a video of them deconstructing. And I'm just like, this movie is for you. It's for you to feel seen. It's for you to feel heard. And to also know that person that abused you or that church that was ugly to you, they don't get to own God and Jesus. They don't get to own that relationship. And so if you ever feel called to open up that relationship again, that's purely between you and God and you and Jesus. And that church or that person does not get to dictate your spiritual journey. Anyways, sorry, don't mean to go on a rant, but that's one of those. I'm just like, I hope that film helps people who've been hurt by the church feel seen. I hope Pastor's Kid does that. Because we just don't tell those stories. We don't share those stories, or it's so on the opposite where we just throw everything out. We throw the baby out with the bathwater, and then people are left with, well, what do I do now? How do I reconcile? Like, I want to have this relationship with God, or I want to reconstruct some of my belief system, but I feel like if I touch into that I'm going to be ostracized by either community in one way or another. So, anyway.
Oh yeah, people are. They're straddling.
So,
Ben, it's been an awesome conversation.
Dude, great talking with you. I love your question jar. It was awesome.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been my compatriot for the last couple of years.
That's awesome.
And and I've sat down, like I said, and had great conversations with people, learning and hearing stories similar to the pastor's kid. And I think the beauty of it is capturing one of those stories and being able to broadcast it and share it with the larger audience in a way that's accessible.
Right.
And you've got the visual stuff, you've got that storytelling. I think the filmmaking is a beautiful part because it can really bring people in and allow someone to tell the story and allow the audience to connect in a way where they wouldn't normally have those conversations.
No, 100%. And that's the big thing we've been trying to tell both sides, the Christians and the non-Christians, both sides, is try to go in with an open mind. Just don't go in with a presupposition of this is going to be a Kirk Cameron movie, or this is going to be a God's Not Dead, or this has an agenda behind it. Because our whole goal was just to have you sit for an hour and a half and experience this woman's journey, and then take away what you feel called to take away from it, as opposed to us shoving things down your throat. So
this interpretation part is what I love. It's what I've enjoyed about the questions is the questions are open to interpretation based on your experience, your life experience, and how you read it and how you interpret it. And then you tell your story from there. So I think your film is doing that exact thing.
I hope so. Yeah.
How people, it'll be interesting because the story, you told it from a very specific point of view, right? You captured it and you told that emotion, but people will hear it from where the place that they're at or the place they've been, and to walk out with such a different interpretation, it's going to blow your mind.
Dude, I even doing these podcasts, we've been on a handful, and it's been so interesting with people who've gotten to see early screeners, the scenes that they pull out that I was just like, oh, that's kind of like in my head. I'm like, oh, we just needed that scene to like get to the next thing, right? You know what I mean? And they're over here like, oh, that moment that she does this like look and this. I'm just like, whoa, you're like reading so much into her performance and what she's putting out that you're pulling so much from it. So it's been very, very exciting to see. We even had one guy who said what his quote was, I went in a skeptic and I came out a fan, or something like that was his like line. And I'm just like, geez, if we can get people just to show up, open mind, I really think it can create a great discussion.
So March 15th, you said.
Yep. So March 15th, 16th, and 17th. Those are our 3 days. It's kind of our weekend that we're trying to hit big. You can go to, pastorskidthemovie.com, and we have all the info on it. We have the original testimony video that I filmed of her on the website as well. So you can see it. I put on the image, I say spoiler warning, because it does give away the whole story. So if you want to go in without knowing everything, I would say wait to watch that on our site until after you've seen the movie. But yeah, pastorskidthemovie.com should have all the info. Tickets go up on sale Wednesday. Was it March 6th? So tomorrow. Yeah, so March 6th, the tickets will be up. We have 30 theaters across the country, I think is the current plan. And then we had 50 more theaters from AMC that were interested in our film if that first weekend is a success. So really trying to push for people to go that first weekend.
So by the 19th, you'll be in 80 theaters.
That would be amazing. I'd love that. Or if it was meant to, what I sit here and say is if it's supposed to hit that one person, I trust that it will get to who it needs to get to and connect with who it's supposed to connect with. If there's one person it's supposed to connect with, then it'll do that. But I would love for it to expand so that more people can experience the story. So yeah.
Reminds me of the Charlie Rose interviewing Mr. Rogers.
Oh.
And Charlie is, reminding him of the millions of kids that he's a parent to in a way. Like people come home, kids come home and turn on the show, and dad's at work, and back in that day, dad's at work and mom's at home probably, and that sit down and to listen to the beautiful stuff, right, that Mr. Rogers went through. And and Charlie was saying, what does it feel like looking back now in your career, all these millions of kids you've touched and you've been a parent to? And he just says, actually, Charlie, if one child, if I reached one child, it was all worth it.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
So
I love that.
I'm sure you're going to reach more than one. Ben, thanks again so much. So March 15th or actually tomorrow, we go on sale.
Yep, tickets go on sale. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely outstanding.
Awesome.
The Pastor's Kid, thepastorsKidmovie.com. If you're listening to this on a podcast, a little bit later in an audio version, movie will be out by the time you hear this, and you can go find it probably either online, VOD, or probably still in a theater. If you're,
I hope so. That would be amazing.
Catching it sometime in March or April.
We'll see how it does. That would be amazing. I'd love it. My goal is to hopefully get to Easter. I would love for it to expand enough for it to get to Easter.
Yeah, and that'll get a little legs. It'll get more legs after that.
And you have, what is it called? The Creasters, the people that go to church on Christmas and Easter. That it would be great if the Creasters showed up. You know what I mean? They'd go to church
I love it.
And then show up to the movie. It sounds great to me. So we'll see if we get there.
I love that. Thanks again, Ben, and thanks everybody for listening and supporting The Humanist as we kind of, this pursuit of flourishing and trying to find out what is it like to be a really good human and in all aspects of life, and to be in a place where we're just, in love with ourselves. And was that quite back to your question, Ben, love ourselves unconditionally and be in that great place where we can walk around with that kind of aura about yourself.
Well, light.
Yeah, a light. You'll be carrying a light, and that'll be a candle in a dark room for some people.
There we go. That's awesome.
Thanks again, everybody. I'll see you soon. I'll see you on the other side. Hang around, Ben, for 10 seconds. Welcome to the Humanist Podcast. I'm your host, Ken Stearns. Join us on a journey where we unravel the intricacies of workplace dynamics